Happy 25th anniversary to Jet Set Radio. Man, that feels crazy to say. I wanted to do something a little fun. I wanted to rank every single level in Jet Set Radio and Jet Set Radio Future. Jet Set Radio and Jet Set Radio Future have a combined total of 19 playable levels throughout the story, minus the final boss levels. I haven't seen anyone else approach this topic, so now I think it's a good time to try and figure out what's the best and the worst levels across both these games. These ranks will be based on the aesthetics, the level design, and its content and what you do in the story mode and the side content. Since OG and Future are completely different in how they approach their gameplay, I'm going to do two separate tier lists for both the games. So let's get started by ranking all 5 levels in the original Jet Set Radio. You probably should have figured what's the worst level in Jet Set Radio because everyone who has played the original game has agreed that Grind Square is the bottom of the barrel in terms of levels. As a fellow resident of New York, it makes me sad. The one saving grace of this level is that it's a visual marvel. It shares a lot of the aspects of what makes actual Times Square a great tourist spot. All the big bright lights and signs showing off the unique attractions the place has to offer. I love seeing it all and it makes me feel right at home in the city. But that's where the good points end. Grind Square is the smallest level in the game in terms of size. By this point in the game, you've experienced these segmented type levels, so Grind Square shouldn't be anything new. However, unlike the levels before this, there was at least tons of space on the ground to move around. There's not much of that here in Grind Square. The real meat and bones of the map is at the top of the buildings, where you always have to take those slow moving elevators to get back up there. And every time you fall down, you have to wait for the elevators to come back down and then get on and then wait to be taken back up. It's a really restricted area when it comes to travel. Although you can move between each building by using the accompanying grind rails around the statue, this is where the obstacles come into play. Those electric guys that shot the grind rails, and if they hit you, you fall back down and then you have to take the elevator again. Then we got the attack helicopters with their amazing tracking missiles which will make you fall down and have to take the slow elevator again. Being a very condensed level with not a lot of space to really move around in, as well as a slow way of getting back to the main path, along with some really annoying enemies, it just makes this stage really unfun and annoying to be in. It's actually a detriment. So, no surprise that Grind Square is at the bottom of the rankings. The third chapter of Jet Set Radio is when you put all your skills to the test. All the previously segmented levels are now put together as one huge level, and you're faced with the challenge of dealing with the Golden Rhinos, who will be your toughest obstacle yet. Now, I think this is actually a pretty cool way to progress through the game. However, when we get to the third chapter of Koga, Fight or Flight, it becomes the most frustrating level in the entire game. If it wasn't for Grind Square just not being very fun to move around in, Koga would have taken that spot for the Fight or Flight mission alone. Now the first level isn't really too bad. You just see the cop cars tossing themselves off the stage and the dogs are just not an issue at all. Then the second level is the construction level, which has the parachute squad and the attack choppers, which do have the seeking missiles but still easy enough. And then, I'ma just be honest, the tagger tags in this game are just not fun at all, but at the very least, the sewers are very confined enough to where you can never lose Poison Jam. But, Fight or Flight, oh my god. Best part about replaying Jet Set Radio is finding the best routes to avoid as many enemies as possible. And I think that really adds to the replay value of this game. But for this mission in particular, it's really annoying. This level has those dreaded sniper dudes with aimbot accuracy and those forsaken jetpack dudes. In a level like this where there's tons of large and extra large graffitis, you're just a sitting duck taking damage from these guys sniping you or flying at you to ruin your points and sometimes send you crashing down. This is also, in my opinion, the hardest mission to get a jet rank in because of these issues. It doesn't become the fun kind of challenging. it becomes the really annoying kind. This level really zaps away any sort of fun in the last remaining half of the game, and every time I reach here, I just stop caring about wanting to get the best score and just want the level to end as quickly as possible. With that being said, I love the look of this place. A very rural part of Tokyo, not crowded like the cities, and this is also the only area in the game that features animals and child NPCs, which is really cool. The sunset will always look great in Kogane, and the sewers are just the right amount of empty and gross to look at. This place is also at least condensed enough so that you'll never get lost when trying to find Poison Jam and the Tagger's Tag. It's overall an okay level, but Fight or Flight really brings it down a lot. Benson-cho is the level that's right down the middle. It has no egregiously annoying things for the most part, but it isn't outstanding. It's just alright. My immediate praise has to go to the aesthetic of the level. You'll hear me talk about this when we get to future, but the Benton region tends to have my favorite look for these games. I'm a sucker for the nightlife look, and Jet Set Radio delivers on that front. The little entertainment hub around the train station and the little straightaways with all the NPCs, this level definitely has my favorite group of NPCs. The guy playing the guitar around the train station, the well-dressed ladies, the Yakuza-like thugs, the drunks. It really captures the vibe of the nightlife really well. The missions are overall fine. The beginning area has enough to do with the bottom half, and you're able to skate up to the top of the building to avoid the Rakaku police here. The tear gas guys can be easily avoided also by skating up to the buildings. The second mission is also pretty easy. I always handle the back area first and then save the rest in the plaza area to avoid the tanks altogether. The third mission is where things kind of get a little difficult, but nothing too crazy. These kung fu guys can kind of suck because you can just damage boost through them, and sometimes they just will never react, so they don't really feel like a threat. But then sometimes they can get a little annoying when you're trying to get the statues up on the stairs. The fire guys can also give you trouble if you decide to leave the graffitis at the bottom of the first area, so you better be sure to handle those first. I don't think this level needs to have 2 taggers tag, but I guess with the limited stage selection, this was the best they could do. This area is condensed at least. Overall, Benson-cho is cool. Again, I love the look of the level, and traversing through it is manageable with its missions. I have no strong feelings towards it, but I can at least say that it is pretty good. One New York inspired level may suck, but it's a good thing that we have this other one. Bantam Street overall is a pretty simple level. It's essentially like one big giant square, but unlike Grind Square, you can actually move around more here. There's a bit more area to explore, and you're not just constantly going up elevators again and again. Now you're probably wondering, why is this higher than Kogane and Benson-cho? Yes, this level is much smaller in comparison, while the other two have more exploration. However, I think the simplicity of Bantam Street is to its benefit. When replaying the Jet Graffiti missions, I find myself replaying Bantam Street the most because of its square structure, and it makes speedrunning and planning your route for the high score really fun. The actual mission during the main story isn't too bad either. The main enemy is the Whip Assassin, which you can avoid interacting with if you deal with the graffiti on top of the buildings and at the bottom first. And again, as a New York native, I do really love how this level replicates being around in the projects, and also that's literally the Brooklyn Bridge, and then you can also see the J train actually come down here. Like, that's really cool. Bantam Street is a good level. While it is on the condensed side, there's nothing in this level that really hinders it from a gameplay standpoint. The best level in the original Jet Set Radio to me has to be Shabuya. I think just strictly off of level design alone, it is the most open and most fun to explore. Every time I feel like I just want to boot up Jet Set Radio, this is usually the level I default to immediately along with Bantam Street. The first part is actually a pretty good starting level to show how the progression of the threat level is. I think the bus terminal part is really good, one of my favorite subsections in the game. The next area, being the park area, is also really good. It's actually pretty large in size, from the half-pipe stuff to the upper side to the park itself and the street, so there is a lot of room to explore here. This is also where they start throwing the tear gas guys, which I feel can be a little bit worrisome here and there, but they're at least spaced out more around the area. And then there's the bikes, which, well, they certainly try. I do really love the Shabuya Crossing type area as well. I really enjoy all the unique shops spread around this place. My only complaint is that this level is very dependent on hills and slopes, and they really want you to use that hanging behind the car mechanic, which in itself is very janky sometimes, and this is the only time you would kind of use it. The final mission is the one that can get really tricky. The bombs are actually not that crazy, but it can definitely be very hard to hear them because the sound is so faint and the music is so loud you can barely hear it. This is just Jet Set Radio's fault for not having proper sound settings. Even then though, you've played these sections previously, you notice when things are out of place and weren't there before, so there's at least still a visual tell. The kamikaze guys are where things get crazy. You are practically screwed if you decide to go about dealing with the larger graffitis on the ground, because these fellas are ruthless and they do not stop. They will find you. They actually have some pretty intelligent AI in them to find your location. Once they latch onto you, they will never let go. So I like the challenge there. This level is great. The only thing that ruins this level for me is that race against beat. This is easily one of the worst parts of this game. I am already not a fan of racing in this game in general because the only way to really move fast is just by constantly jumping, and it is very clunky. The half pipe section is essentially life or death. If you don't make it through that door on the first go, you essentially lost the race. It doesn't help either that the physics on the half pipe aren't very stellar. This is easily the most recognizable locale in Jet Set Radio. One of my favorite parts about this level is the aesthetic as well as the NPC variety here. Since this is the big city, you get a lot of NPCs here, and in particular, this is where you'll get to see most of the high school students, and then you all see them wearing different shirts, indicating that they probably are in different classes. It's details like that that really makes the level stand out. In any case, Shabuya takes the crown for being the best level in the original Jet Set Radio, even if the competition was very small, so congratulations. Now it is time to rank the Jet Set Radio future levels. There are way more here and they all have more things to work with, so let's get right to it. This might be a bit of a stretch, but it is part of the main story and you can enter the area in game, so we can count it. The worst level in Jet Set Radio Future is the Rakaku Expo Stadium. This stadium is one of the main standout levels from the multiplayer section of this game. It's your standard circular racing track with grind rails at the beginning, the small wall ride section in the middle to give you an extra boost, and then for the rest of the way you're kinda just skating straight. Nothing too standout, nothing too offensive, except for the fact that you have to race on this track 4 times. 3 times in the ever so boring Death Ball chapter, and 1 final time to unlock Jazz. This course is not that interesting to be racing on it 4 times. I will admit that it is cool having a crowd on the side and on the top of the stadium cheering you on. Another detail that is cool is that the tower that Goji uses at the end of the game is foreshadowed here in this level. What can I really say? This is the Death Ball chapter. The Expo Stadium is really not that impressive. It's just boring. Boring. And then we also get the random appearances of the Doom Riders and the Love Shockers who don't do anything afterwards if you decide to skip out on their extra battles. So this is really their only appearances and they're just there to be jobbers. I mean, there's nothing else to them after that. I guess the Terror Drone fight is kind of cool and actually seeing it move is a pretty nice touch. Now let's actually talk about a real level. This may be a weird choice to some, but yes, I think Hikag Street is one of the worst levels in this game. For those who have played the game, you probably are like, why Hikage Street? It's the easiest level. And you are correct, it is. My problem doesn't stem from the fact that it's an easy level. I mean, most of Jet Set Radio Future is easy. but it's very uninteresting as a level entirely. Visually, there's really nothing that stands out from this level, and it looks very drab with its colors. The only thing that it really has as a set piece is that one construction machine in one of the paths. It's a very straightforward map with no real switch ups. You got 3 separate paths, skate to the main part of the section, and then skate up to the stairs to get the graffiti. Rinse and repeat 3 times. The Terra drone fight is kinda cool, even if it can be cheesed easily, or you'll get annoyed by getting caught by the bombs and getting sent back down to the ground, which makes you have to grind back up to the stairs. Maybe the Love Shockers rematch can give you a little bit of trouble if you're not too familiar with the maze, but that's not too bad either. Even the post-game graffitis and test runs can't really add much to switch things up. It's pretty much the same thing of going to the main paths and just grinding up the stairs. And because of this very confined location, you can't do much with graffiti soul placements either. Grind Square was bad because it was just poorly designed. Hikage Street is just bad for just kind of being boring as a level entirely. Here's another inoffensive but kind of boring level. The bottom part of the sewers is another part of the sewers that is just a glorified racetrack. Now, visually, I actually think this place looks great. You can see here that this is probably where most of the pollution is stemming from. And then when you get to the main throne room where you get to meet Cube, I mean, come on, this place actually looks crazy. Like, how do you go out of your way to have a throne room like this? It's awesome. However, that's the most interesting part of the level, while the rest of it is kinda bland overall. There's not too much that happens at this level either. You go here to face off against Poison Gym and Tagger's Tag, and then you come back to recruit Cube. That's pretty much it. The extra graffiti here is pretty easy, and the street challenges are pretty standard. This is also one of the easiest places to collect graffiti souls. One of the few places that doesn't have a special challenge, which is interesting. It's not a bad level, just nothing special. Koga Hill has me conflicted. Now, I really do love the concept of this being so far away in Tokyo that you have to go through the sewers, and it feels so far apart from the rest of the areas in Kogane. There are a good amount of people that actually live here, and then there's also the giant Rakaku missiles being stored in this factory-like area. There's this little area with the doomsday clock, and it actually has a couple residents here as well. Despite being a very far off area, it ended up being less deserted than Raku Die Heist. Also, there's a secret cat room. You can't go wrong here. This level is fairly straightforward at a glance. It's just one giant circle with 4 main areas: the buildings, the factory, the middle half, and then the end. Your main source of getting around is grinding, which is really the most you'll be doing here. With how segmented the areas are, it is easy to keep track of where the graffitis will be. The helicopter fights are super easy, so no real issue there, and in terms of test runs, the tech challenge is fairly easy with the telephone pole, and the jet race is easy since the travel is just mostly grinding. So why do I rank it so lowly? It has to do with the underground sections. This is where things start getting messy when it comes to fighting the graffiti souls and the remaining post-game graffitis. You may not know that you have to go underground for some of them, especially when looking after graffiti souls. On your first playthrough, you're gonna be like, well, where the hell is this place? That alone really brings down Koga Hill for me every time I come back to 100% the game. I will say though that I don't exactly hate this level. It's not terrible, but not one of my favorite levels still. I know I've repeated this multiple times, but this is another level that's overall inoffensive but just a little boring. Which is a little sad to say this time because I think the visuals for this level are very striking. I like the dark green neon lighting this place gives off. Although you could say that this place is kind of like Yakuza Kiwami 2, which to most is a bad thing. Although, I'm not gonna lie, Kiwami 2 is a pretty ugly game. This place is pretty much an extension of the highway area in Benson Cho, but now it has a little shopping area that's the main attraction. This is really where all the cool visual stuff is. Besides that, it is very condensed, not a lot of room for exploration. In the main story, this place is only used for the Tagger's Tag against the Immortals, the Pyromaniac fight, and this is also when you unlock Soda, who tends to be the most forgotten character in the game. Highway Zero doesn't leave much of an impression, but it is fine. We're back in the sewers to enter the Fortified Residential Zone. This was always a strange level to me in terms of concept. I talked about Kibogaoka being so far away from the rest of Tokyo, but this is not only far away, but weirdly confined. This place is one big giant bunker. Not really a place to settle down and make a home in, and then there's also a group of NPCs rallying together in the second area. I wonder if this has something to do with Rakaku's influence and everyone just escaping in here. Who knows? How is the actual level? Well, it is a mostly vertical level where you're going to be climbing up. The stakes are high in the main story where you have to defuse 2 sets of bombs with a whopping total of an hour to do it. There's no real urgency here. You can take as much time as you want. The first set is structured easily with just having to go up each flight of stairs. The second one I would say is still very easy since the path presented to you is fairly straightforward, except for the one where you have to go into the maze area at the bottom to find that last bomb. I know that stumped a lot of first time players and it certainly stumped me when I first played the game. The final top section of the level can be annoying. You have to figure out which platforms fall and which ones doesn't. This is only a problem when you have to go for the post-game graffitis. However, if you just want to save Yo-Yo, with a well-timed boost jump, you can actually make it to the other side so you can do the fighter jet fight, which is also pretty easy. I know a number of people who don't really like FRZ, but I always thought it was fine with a simple 3-structure level with 3 main floors, and you have enough information of how the level is to get a good feel on where the graffiti souls will spawn. The only annoying street challenge is definitely the 100 tricks one. You'd probably be confused on where you could actually do 100 tricks in such a confined area like this, but there is a section in the first area where you could just loop around on these rails and ladders here, so you could easily achieve the 100 tricks. Now that I've grown up and gotten much better at the game, FRZ is not as bad as I used to picture it when I was a kid. It's actually pretty decently made. To wrap up the final sewer level, we have, well, the actual underground sewers of Tokyo. This place is all about verticality, so your main goal is to reach up to the top, and you'll use your handy dandy half-pipe skills that you'll learn from Garum. This level may feel intimidating, but when you really look at it, it's actually structured in a very linear fashion. Like the Fortified Residential Zone, you can look at each part of the sewers as segments. Like you have the bottom section over here, and then you have the second part which has 4 different pathways that you can go through. And then you have the final top section which has the giant cylinder in the middle. You are encouraged to really explore each section so that you won't miss out on any collectibles or any of the switches that you'll need to find to unlock the bottom point of the sewers. Visually, besides the actual scale of the level, everything is just blue and drab. There's nothing really interesting in terms of set pieces, except for this giant salamander. I mean, this is really cool. You might spend your longest here dealing with the post-game graffitis, especially when most of them have to do with wall riding, and then when some of the graffiti souls come in, there's one I would say take the cake as the hardest graffiti soul to obtain, but if you are able to get consistent wall rides, it is pretty simple, but it might take a while for first time players. I've grown a bit more appreciative of the difficulty of the sewers. It may not be one of my favorite levels, but I still overall kind of like it for what it is. When I see others talking about what level they hated the first time they played Jet Set Radio Future, the Skyscraper District and Pharaoh part is the one that comes up the most often. I don't blame them. The Skyscraper district is one of the largest levels in terms of size. The Pharaoh Park section of the Skyscraper district is actually really stunning with all the Egyptian aesthetics with the pillars and the pyramids and the giant spinning Pharaoh ride. It's really cool having a theme park like level in this game. Where you're really going to be doing most of the traveling is in the Skyscraper half. This is the most platforming you're going to be doing in this game, and on your first time, you're definitely going to get lost on your first go around. I don't hate the Skyscraper district like I used to back when I was a kid, but I definitely feel for a lot of people who played this for the first time and just had crappy memories of it. I actually do like the bigger focus on platforming it has, and the post-game graffitis does make use of just how extensive this level is. Moving on to the next door neighbor of the Skyscraper district, it's Sky Dinosaurian Square. Having a theme park as a level in a game like this was a great decision. This place is a visual galore with the dinosaur theme. Going into a dinosaur's mouth, the pterodactyl flying around with the swing, giant contraption that goes upside down, and it even comes with a show for people to watch. Beautiful stage, fantastic idea. However, a level with an idea like this comes with a bit of an issue. Transportation in this level mostly just involves strictly grinding, which makes sense. Grinding on a giant roller coaster in an amusement park does make sense for travel for an inline skater, but it can get a little boring when all you really have is a bottomless pit below you. But at the very least, you have some few spots where you can enjoy some of the areas on the ground. I think the biggest issue with Sky Dinosaurian Square for me is due to how this game is structured, you won't experience all this level has to offer. You really only go to here once for the Tiger's Tag against the Noise Take, and depending on how good you are, it will go by very quickly, and you won't get to see much of what this level has to offer, leaving to make a lot of new discoveries of just how big the actual level is for the post game. Beforehand, you already got a taste of going through the majority of the previous levels, so you are more familiar with their layouts. In this case, you're going to be seeing a lot of new paths for the first time in the post game. It will definitely be overwhelming for newer players getting the post game graffitis and graffiti souls with how unfamiliar this level will be. But overall though, I still have semi-positive opinions on this level for its stellar presentation and stage theme. After replaying Future so much, I am kind of surprised by how condensed Rakaku Die Heist is. You can kind of place it down to 3 areas: the bottom part with the railroad, the top half with the playground, and the top part with the rocket. It could look initially intimidating, but in reality, it's pretty well structured. This is the start of where Future's levels start having some verticality to them, and when you'll learn the importance of having to use the wall rides before you'll have to start using them in areas like the sewers and the Skyscraper district. Because everything is mostly condensed, the graffiti souls aren't too tough to find, and it makes the places where you'll have to really go out of your way to explore more distinct areas like the playground and the underground portion. I do appreciate how this level has a little shortcut to cut back on the backtracking to get to the sewers or the other side of the map. Raku Die Heist is also a little creepy aesthetically. As DJ Professor K says, it's an abandoned place forgotten in time. You see it with how little people are actually out in this area, only huddling in these little mobile houses. Most of the place is emptied out, and it is the main centerpiece of Rakaku's pollution. The sunset from Kogane is still very present, and this is where you take care of Poison GM's graffiti and have quite a number of run-ins with the Rakaku police. That is, if you don't know the tricks, which is one of the reasons why I love this area. Has some of my favorite skips in the game, and it's where the stats of characters matter because Gum at this point of the story is the only one capable of this skip. So I think Rakaku Die Heist is actually a really cool level. Not my favorite, but I think I still rank it pretty high amongst the levels in Jet Set Radio Future. If you were to ask me for an example of a great starting level in a video game, I would probably tell you Dogen Zaki Hill. This is the first real level in the game, and it's a great playground for you to get used to the game's control feel. It's a pretty standard level layout wise, mostly consisting of long straight paths with a few turns along the way. Since this is your first level, the graffitis are in very easy spots that don't require much platforming. You do your first race in the game against Beat, and your first encounter with the Rakaku police, where you find out that they're pathetically easy to take out. Besides the North Tank invasion, the only other time you would be back here is for the Doom Riders race, which is also very easy. I do really like how strong of an impression this level leaves on you to help you get used to the game, especially with the street challenges. You can get most of the street challenges done in this one long stretch here with the grind rail, getting used to the multi-trick timing and how the scoring system works with how certain rails give different point values. The graffiti souls you gain from the street challenges are also very easy to get. The first one you can actually get by doing a boost jump, which is how you figure out, oh, this is how I can reach certain areas for collectibles. I do also really like how populated this place is, especially in the main area with the statue and the shopping mall area, which is one of my favorite places visually. For as simple as it is, I do love how great of a beginning level Dogen Zaki Hill is. I also just have some nostalgia for it as well with how much I've played this level time and time again with every start of the playthrough. This is how you do a first level in a video game. I was actually struggling to decide whether or not I wanted to place this level in third or second, but I think I ultimately decided on third. Chu Street has always been one of my favorite levels visually. So it comes with a lot of cool set pieces like the dedicated shopping center, the music shop with the giant statue in the middle, and this game's own version of the Shabuya Tower. I think the only parts that feels a bit out of place are the sewer parts. I would have liked it if they've leaned a little more into the fact that this is more of an entertainment district for Shabuya. In gameplay, this is when they introduce new variations of Rakaku boss fights with the tanks. They don't really move, so they are no threat at all. But it is cool that they give us a taste of future encounters. You also do another race with Poison Gem, which is also pretty easy. This is also where you fight the Claw guy, who I used to find very annoying as a kid. However, if you have a character with a max of 35 cans, you can 2 to 3 cycle him no problem. The street challenges are also pretty easy here, and there's really no issue with finding graffiti souls. The only ones that you may have an issue with is with the building sections here, but all you really need is a well-timed boost jump. And since this place is just one big giant circle similar to Dogen Zaki Hill, you won't be having any issues trying to find the graffiti souls. Chu Street is another fairly simple level, but it is a bit of a slight step up from the previous levels in terms of difficulty without feeling overwhelming. The visuals are great, the street challenges are not too demanding. It really gets the job done well for what it sets out to do. Kind of ironic that both games that feature the bus terminal are very high on my list. Now you're probably wondering, why in the world is this easy level so high on the list? Because when I think about great playgrounds for Jet Set Radio Future's movement, Shabuya Terminal is usually the place I can think of. This is the first level you actually see when you boot up the game. Like when you're at the title screen, this is the level they show off the characters in. I would say this is the level that defines Jet Set Radio Future the most. In terms of structure, this one is a giant box layout, so there is no linear way to go about exploring this level. Very compact. It's crazy to see this little area from the original game now is this big spacious playgrounds with more stairs, more top platforms to jump on, an entirely new upper area, and just generally more space to work with. Usually when I just boot up the game to move around with my characters, Shabuya Terminal is usually the level I tend to pick. Not very demanding with the graffiti at all, and since this place is just one big confined box, you definitely won't be lost looking for graffiti souls. The level also has one of my favorite street challenges where you have to hop on every top platform. Visually, it's really not that different from the bus terminal from the original game, but the things that they did add to the bus terminal makes it feel very abstract. Like with the giant rocket on top of this building here, I think stuff like this is really cool. In terms of relevance and role in the game, a lot of stuff actually happens here. This is where you first encounter Hayashi. This is also where the golden rhinos appear and the NPCs start running in fear. And this is also where the final battle takes place against Goji and Zero B. Again, Shabuya Terminal is the level that represents Jet Set Radio Future. I love Shabuya Terminal, but there is just one level in this game that will always take the cake for me as my favorite. This may have been an obvious choice, but yes, 99th Street is my favorite level in Jet Set Radio Future. This was always the level I looked forward to the most whenever I did replays of this game. Visually, it has my favorite aesthetic in the game. It took that little street area that was in the original game and expanded it tenfold into something that really captures the red light district. The many stores around the area, the NPCs partying around outside, the bright purple and pink lights. The main attraction in the middle of this map is this giant dragon statue that you can scale up towards, which I always really love doing. Then when we move to the party side of things, this is where all the NPCs populate in the area, and you can see some things like love hotels in this game. Honestly, seeing something like this is just that reminder that Jet Set Radio is not a kid's game, which people tend to forget. Then there's also the other part of 99th Street, which was foreshadowed by DJ Professor K, the mysterious blackout. This place is a contrast to the rest of the subsections in this area. It's all dark, creepy, and there's only like 2 NPCs in this place just sitting down on their own. It feels like I stepped into a completely different level, but no, this is still 99th Street. I kinda like how unsettling it feels, and to this day, we still don't know who or what caused this blackout. Structure wise, it is fairly simple, with one big middle area around the Dragon Tower, and then there's the light and dark district. So with it being structured like this, it is easy to distinguish where post-game graffitis and street challenges graffiti souls will spawn. The only real complicated spot is where later in the game you can jump to the higher buildings above the districts, but even that too isn't too confusing. The boss fight against the searchlights is whatever, and then you battle Rappin' 99 in your first introduction to flag battles, which if you skip the Love Shockers rematch, this is the only time you'll do them. They're also not in very complicated spots either. What's really funny is how easily you can break the AI during the flag battles. It's a shame that Rappin' 99 didn't get used much because they have such cool designs, but this is really their only contribution in the main story, easily the worst rival group in the game. Overall though, I will still say 99th Street is my favorite level in Jet Set Radio Future. When it comes to visual storytelling, the structure, and how much I like it gameplay wise, this is the most standout level in the game for me. Now I know it may seem like these games don't really have tremendous or outstanding levels, but I still think the important thing is if they're really fun to explore and I really like what they offer visually, then I'd say they achieved their job, which I would say at least most Jet Set Radio Future levels offered with a few exceptions. Whenever we do get to see Jet Set Radio 3 again, I wonder how they'll go about further expanding these levels with a new open world approach. I guess we'll just have to wait and see.